Let's look at the difference between painting a shape, like a circle, and painting a form, like a sphere. What's going to be really important is that we have really nice painting skills, that our edges are nice and smooth, because if it's all scratchy and not really round, first of all, it's not going to look like the right shape, and then when we're trying to make the form, we need to focus on how to add highlight and the shadow on the edge of our sphere to make it look like it has depth, because the shape has height and width, but our form also needs to have depth, look like it's going back into the page or that it's round. So let's go over how we will paint just the circle first, and then we'll go ahead and we'll take it to the form, the sphere. We've gone over how to use the tools, like the paintbrush and the paints and everything, but now when it's time to paint, what I really want you to pay attention to is how much paint I'm getting on the brush and how we're using it. So I'm holding this just like I would a pencil, and I dip it in sideways, not just straight up and down. I just dip it in, and now only half of it is really covered, so I usually turn it and dip the other half. This way, I've got paint all the way around. No matter how I set down the brush, I will have paint on it. And that's really important. I don't have paint all the way to the very top of your brush, because if it's up here, your hands are going to get messy, and it means that you've been scrubbing. The brush will really only have paint at the end, maybe about halfway if we're doing a lot, but if it's all the way up here, we're going to need to talk to Miss Gore or try a different method because we're just a little too rough with the brush. So here is the shape I want to do. The first step, after I have paint on my brush, when I get to the painting, is to go around the edges. I'm right-handed, so I like to start down and to the left and bring it around and back over. I know that sometimes, we're trying to be careful with the paint because we don't want to have too much, but also, you guys, don't be afraid of having paint on your brush, because if it gets too dry, it's not going to make that nice smooth edge. To make a smooth edge, you need quite a bit of paint. If you don't have paint, you can't make a smooth edge. I set it down, and I calmly, slowly pull around in a long swoop. Now this, see how there are all these little lines? That means my brush is too dry, that I need to get more paint. Up here, the smooth edge is what I want. So I'm going to come back over and dip till there's paint all the way around. And I'm going to set it down nicely and calmly, get to the edge, slowly follow the curve. If you're having trouble with the curve, you can always turn your hand, or you might want to turn the paper. So here I've got almost halfway around. Sometimes I pull it further out and come to the edge and then go around. And you can come down here and work around. Be careful where you're putting your hand. You don't want to set your hand right in the painting you've been doing, because that is going to make you a mess. And we want to have clean hands at the end of all of this, because we're just putting paint on the brush. I know a lot of you guys will want to talk with your friends and be busy doing fun things like that. Look, I already got a little on my hand. But if you're busy talking, it is harder to make these smooth edges. So even as I'm talking to you guys and telling you all the things I'm thinking and how I do this, I would probably be even better if I just closed my mouth, watched what I was doing, and worked really hard and focused. Now that I have a smooth edge around the circle, I'm going to go ahead and start to pull the color, the paint. I'm going to pull it into the middle. When you think your paintbrush is too dry, you're going to go ahead and get more. Just a couple dips. Because we've done the edge now, I can go just up and down gently with my paintbrush. I'm not scrubbing, I'm just using the very end of it. I don't have to push this all the way down on the paper, just up and down. And I can paint it in so nice and smooth, and I don't have to worry about the edges. If you are going way too fast with this, you're going to go outside of the line you just painted. And I don't really want to see that. I want you to still be calm and painting it nice and smooth. Try and go the same direction, because if it's all going different directions, it'll look okay from far away, but up close it might look a little messy. And that is all you have to do to make your circle. The next step is making it a sphere. So let me get this a little more centered on our paper. The first couple steps are going to be exactly the same when I do a sphere. I'm going to have to make it all one color, then add the highlight, the white part, and the shadow, the dark part. The thing that changes though is that I need to work quicker and with more paint on my brush. It needs to be really wet. And I've seen a lot of people working and they just get nervous about it, I think, and so they use less paint. But then the sphere doesn't look right, so really keep it wet. So I'm going to dip and get more paint than I did even last time. And I bring it over here, set it down, and calmly and smoothly around the edges. I can always come back here and start pulling it the other way. All the way around. Now if it looks a little gloppy, like big bumpy parts of wet, then yeah, smooth it out, but otherwise keep it really wet. If some part of it doesn't look really shiny, that means it's not wet enough. I want you to go right on the edges of the lines you see on the paper. And here's where maybe I want to turn mine a little bit so that I can reach over here. Be careful when you're turning it though, because you might lose track of what's wet and what's not, and I really don't want you to set your whole hand on a wet circle or sphere. It might mess up what you're making, and it's going to mess up your hand. Gonna get some more. Another dip because I want it really wet. This time I'm working faster. I'm trying to not worry as much that it's a perfect circle. Now that I've done the outlining, the first step, I need to paint the middle. This is especially where I want you to keep it really wet. See how wet that is? I'm going to get even more. Really wet. Another. Really keeping it shiny and wet. Now, the next steps are going to go quickly because it has to stay wet. And if I stand here or sit here talking to you too long, it's going to totally dry out and then you won't be able to see what I want to do. So I take my brush, and yes, it still has green on it. I'm not too worried. I don't have globs of green because I kept this nice and painted nicely. Now I need to dip in the highlight. So I take the white paint and I just do a quick little dip, and I have some on my brush. You can see that I have it just at the edge, not all the way up. And yes, there is still green, but I just have a nice clean white on the end of it because I just took it and dipped in and out of the white paint. Here's my highlight. I'm not on the very edge, but a little bit in. I'm going to make a nice bright white dot. Then we're going to pull like a sunburst, away, 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 like the lines coming off the sun. We're not going around like a swirl. I want you to pull away like a sunburst, and what that's going to do, there's less white on my paintbrush now, and it's going to slowly get lighter. So I'm pulling away like a sunburst, like when I draw a sun in my cartoon pictures. I don't want to go over the whole white area, but just a little bit. And then I want you to keep going around the part you just painted and pull. It's almost like the sunburst part is solid green now. See how this is faded? It's blended out, but I still have a really bright white spot. And now, if I come back and look at my paintbrush, it has barely any white at all. If you still have a glob of white somewhere, you're going to need to keep pulling because the green on your picture is going to wear that away. So this part is still wet, right? Can you see that in the video? That's what I need to have happen. So I got to keep going right away to the next step. I'm going to dip in the black. Black is way stronger than white, so I know I need even less of black. So I'm going to really calmly do a little dip. You can always add more with your paint. Like if this is not enough black, I can always go and get more, but I cannot take it off of my paper. So I need to be careful that I don't use too much too fast. It's even smaller than the amount of white. I'm going to be making a C shape, not on the edge, a little bit in, just a big curve. And so now I might turn my paintbrush over. There's my curve. Just like on this one, we're going to almost like a sunburst out. Now this is more of a moon shape, but around all the edges, we're going to pull away, pull away, pull away. And slowly it's going to turn more gray and less dark. And that's going to help it look really round. So pull, 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 pull. Even at the edge over here, I'm pulling away. Up here. And now I'm going to go to where I just pulled and keep working out. Now my paintbrush, at least on one side, is almost just green again. And it's still keeping that C shape. On the back side, you might want to do a little bit of this, but you don't have to worry too much. Just maybe a little bit. This would be another one. This one's more difficult than the circle, so again, I would not be talking to my friends. I'd be really looking at my work and trying to make sure I'm doing my best. Really fading it out. You don't need to go outside of your sphere, outside of that circle shape, so be careful. But if you've blended that black C up, just like you did like the sunburst on the white, all of a sudden it looks really round and it has depth. That is how we're going to paint our sphere.